Welcome back. In this video we're going to learn how to play the 1 to 4 player cooperative board game 7th Citadel by Serious Poulp. If you clicked on this video thinking it was episode 7 of Amazon's exciting Citadel series, then I'm afraid you're going to suffer even more disappointment than my regular viewers. Many of you will have already played Serious Poulp's previous game, Series and Continents or whatever the hell it's called, and the rules for 7th Citadel are very similar. But in this video I'm going to pretend that you don't already know how to play, which is probably not the worst approach when you're making a how to play video. At the very end of this video I'll do a quick comparison between the two games, in case you're interested. In terms of game components, 7th Citadel contains the usual suspects: some filing cabinets containing 500,000 cards, some bits of melted plastic, French tax returns, fidget spinners, star-bellied sneeches, and even a magnifying glass to remind you how old you got waiting for this Kickstarter to deliver. If Serious Poulp is watching this, that was just a joke about the magnifying glass. I say that because the game hasn't delivered yet, and I'm afraid that if they see this video, my pledge may arrive looking like this. When your own copy of the game arrives and you're excitedly unboxing it, remember that everything, from the cards to the booklets, should be kept secret. I went to a lot of trouble to keep this video spoiler free, so if you go rifling through the components like a 4-year-old with a haul of Halloween candy, I won't be angry, but I'll be very disappointed. In 7th Citadel, each player takes on the role of a little plastic adventurer, wearing fluorescent pyjamas, and you'll be exploring and questing your way across a dynamically unfolding map made of cardboard, fog, and homicidal vegetables. The game is divided into a number of separate campaigns, rather intimidatingly referred to as threats, and each threat is divided into several scenarios. You'll win the game if you manage to survive all the scenarios and overcome the threat, and you'll lose if all the adventurers go unconscious, which happens when your Aztec Geiger counter gets reduced to 0. If I had to summarise this game in a single word, that word would be cards and icons. So let's start by looking at the icon which represents, well, cards. All the cards in the game are square, so the icon is also a square, but tilted 45 degrees, which I don't recommend doing to the actual cards unless you want to play like this. And the colour of the icon matches the colour of the card back. Let's introduce the three main card types. First off, we have the cards with blue backs. These are called action cards, and each player gets their own deck of them. They represent the actions you take and the skills you acquire, and they belong exclusively to you and your character, so don't go passing them around to other players like they're a punnet of blueberries. Next we have exploration cards, which contain a bunch of random events which will befall you as you explore the map. If you're traversing a desolate tundra and a piano drops on your head, that was probably an exploration card. They have a foggy grey back and are represented by a grey icon. And finally there are adventure cards. These have a 3-digit number on the back, and usually they have a green back, although some of them are gold. They represent everything else in the game, from map tiles to equipment to game conditions and much more. And those are the three main groups of cards. We'll get more familiar with all of them, I promise. Now let's look at how gameplay is structured. Player turns are divided into 7 phases and 3 response triggers, each with 7 steps and 4 bonus actions. Actually, none of that's true. This game has the easiest turn structure I've ever met, which is this: perform an action. And that's it. Just keep doing that until the game ends. I swear I'm not kidding. What's more, players can take turns in whatever order they like, so you're able to perform several actions in a row, provided the other players don't mind waiting around for you to finish. Actions are represented by an icon inside a little white box. For example, here's the Rage Quit action, which is especially useful when you've just run out of life points 50 hours into your first game and have to restart the entire threat. And here's an action for joining an indoor rock climbing gym. Beneath the action icon you'll find a black box describing what happens when you inevitably fail, and beside it a white box describing what would have happened if only you hadn't failed. Now, in order to understand why you're so astonishingly inept at simple everyday actions, like tying your own shoelaces, you'll need to learn about your action deck. Each player gets their own set of action cards with a blue back, and it's a good idea to keep the draw pile on the left of your character card and the discard pile on the right. In some ways, these action cards represent your character's energy or life force, because each time the deck becomes depleted, you'll lose valuable life points or experience cards. So, returning to the rock climbing action, there's a number beside it in a blue diamond. This is the action's cost, the minimum number of action cards you'll need to draw in order to perform the action. Beside that is the action's difficulty, in other words, the minimum number of gold stars I'll need to succeed. So I'll go ahead and perform this action, and I think I'll draw 4 cards to be on the safe side. Okay, there's a lot going on with these cards, but right now I'm just looking for gold stars, called successes, in the margin on the left. Naturally I can rearrange the cards so that half stars combine to make whole ones. But unfortunately the last 2 half stars are both oriented the same way, so I can't combine them to make a whole star. You're definitely not allowed to turn action cards upside down. Any attempt to house rule your way around this will set off an alarm at Serious Poulp's head office in France, and trust me, you do not want those guys knocking on your door, waving end-user license agreements and carrying a portable guillotine. So in this case the half stars are both useless to me, and I've only managed a total of 2 successes. Calling them successes seems a little optimistic to me, since as you can see the action's difficulty is 3, so I fail the action and apply any fail consequences. With the action finished, I'll discard all the action cards I drew. As you can see, the action deck is a bit like an unhealthy relationship. Its role is to repeatedly fail you and then gaslight you into thinking it's your fault for not having drawn more cards. And that's it really. Those are the only icons you'll ever encounter in the entire game. Okay, so that is a bald-faced lie. This game has more icons than a Cinnabon delivery van has calories. Fortunately, you absolutely do not need to memorize every icon to start playing. There's a super handy icon reference on the back cover of the rulebook, which will become your new best friend. In fact, you should probably resign yourself to flip-flopping back and forth between the rulebook and your game table like a fish on dry land for your first few games. Now let's set up our adventurers. There are 4 characters to choose from: Arfin, Brooks, Cassock and Denham, whose initials, by an astonishing coincidence, are A, B, C and D. The beginning scenario will help you choose a character, but for this video I'll just grab Cassock, who looks like he came straight from a photo shoot for Ugly Adventurer magazine, and Forrest Gump. Okay, I think the best way to learn how to play is to dive right in. We're almost ready to don our PJs and head off into the wild. We just need one more piece of the puzzle, which is skills. Each character has their own deck of skill cards with a little blue Smurf glove in the corner. The name of the skill is at the top, and at the bottom there's a box describing... Hey, that's weird. This card has got stars on it as well. And it's got a blue back. Hang on a moment, it's the same card we were using a moment ago. Oh my god, action cards and skill cards are the same thing. It's like Fight Club all over again. So it turns out that each player has a hand of cards. I'll put them down here below their character card. And although it's empty at the start of the game, it's possible for action cards to make their way down into your hand, at which point they're usually referred to as skills. We'll see how that happens in a moment, but for now I'm just going to cheat and add this card to my hand. The most important rule about these cards is that the white area and the blue area are never available at the same time. If it's in your hand, then you can use the blue area, but the white area is completely off limits. And when it's not in your hand, the reverse is true. What's more, you can't move a card out of your hand to use elsewhere. Once a card enters your hand, the only place you can choose to move it is the discard pile. Skill cards contain a dizzying variety of effects, bonuses, actions and opportunities, and although I'll gloss over them for now, we will see some gameplay examples later. Each character has their own set of these cards, and in the top left corner you'll see the first letter of the character's name. There are also some cards marked with an X, which can be used by any character. The A, B, C, D and X skill cards are called character skills, and they get their own little space in the card tray. They're the ones you'll have at the start of your adventure. There are also some advanced skill cards, which you'll hopefully be able to acquire as you progress through the scenarios. They're marked with a little wreath icon. Finally, there's a set of reflex skill cards, intended mainly for pirates because they're marked with an R. These are a lot like the advanced cards in that you'll be able to occasionally add one to your action deck as you play, but they have an added twist. We've already seen how skill cards are divided into 2 regions, white and blue. In all the cards we've looked at so far, the white region only contains icons, namely stars and half stars, which we've already met, and class icons, which I shall repeatedly fail to explain so that you're forced to keep watching this stupid video. But a reflex card also includes some text describing some sort of effect, and because it's in the white region, it automatically kicks in as soon as you draw the card. A bit like a reflex really. And those are the 3 flavours of skill cards, in a nutshell. Each threat will tell you how to set up your adventurer's action deck, but for this video I'll just take each character's 15 starting cards marked with their initial, B for Brooks and C for Cassock. And what the hell, I'll shuffle a few of the X cards in there as well for good measure. And that's all you get, no skill cards and no purse cards until you earn them. Okay, that is more than enough preamble. Let's start playing. Obviously, the threat booklet will set the stage and immerse you in the atmosphere, but we're going to skip all that and just magically appear on the map. Actually, you might not want to get too emotionally attached to old Cassock and Blue Eyes, because based on my own board gaming ineptitude, there's a decent chance they'll become a couple of corpses in a staggeringly short time frame. Okay, let's pretend the threat book told me to draw these 2 adventure cards. The first card turns out to be a terrain tile, which starts our map. Notice that terrain tiles don't have an icon in the top left corner. The other card is a global event. The card's effect is inside this frame, and the icon at the top is called a condition. The condition icon always has a brown background, and it tells you which action, or actions, the effect applies to. In this case, the effect kicks in when someone performs the move action. The spiky red border surrounding the condition means that the effect is mandatory. Global events apply to all players across the entire board, so I'll keep that off to one side. Whenever you place a new terrain tile with these little orange arrows, you need to immediately place some exploration cards as well, in this case to the east and to the south. You always pick exploration cards at random and place them face down. Different regions of the map have different exploration decks, so make sure the Roman numeral on each exploration card matches the arrow that points to it. In the game's tutorial scenario, that Roman numeral will be whatever the hell this is. Also notice that beside each orange arrow is the number of a green adventure card. As we'll see later, that's the number of the terrain card which will be used to build out the map once we've dealt with those pesky exploration cards. There are also a couple of actions available on the terrain card. The Observe action next to the Giant Artichoke and the Examine action next to the Rave Tent. And I think this is a good moment to wrap up the first video in this short series. I hope you'll join me in part 2, where Smurfette and Army Fatigues take their first faltering steps in the Cal Protectorate. I've tried not to fill this video with misinformation, but if I discover any mistakes, I'll list them in the description below. I did try reaching out to Serious Poulp in the hopes that they could check this video for errors, but unfortunately I got no response, which is probably not surprising, given that in the digital ocean that is YouTube, I'm not so much a small fish, but more of a microscopic tardigrade. Speaking of the channel, a big thank you to the game developers who have responded to me, and thanks also to the viewers who have kept this channel alive by sharing videos, leaving comments, and generally being way more supportive than I could have hoped for. See you in part 2.